Hi, planty people. Welcome back to the Half-Assed Gardener, and today we're talking about starting seeds. The first thing you're going to want to think about with starting seeds is what you're putting them in. Now, seeds don't need much in the way of nutrients in their soil. It's like an egg. A seed has everything it needs nutrition-wise to germinate. You just need to supply the environment for it to do that. This is cocoa coir. I really like it as a seed starting medium because you can get it very fine. Okay, you can buy purpose-made seed starting mixes of soil, or you can make your own. The important thing is that it is really fine and easy for young roots to pass through and well draining. Okay, we want to make sure that the water leaves, like we want our seeds to stay moist. Okay, that's how they germinate. But you don't want the water to sit around and have them trying to exist in a swamp, because then your seeds are just going to rot, your young roots are going to rot, it's going to be a mess, and it's just going to end in disappointment and tears. So, fine, well-draining medium. If you're doing a particularly tiny seed that likes to be close to the top, throw a layer of vermiculite over it. Vermiculite is heavier than your seed starting medium is going to be, and it'll help hold them down so they don't blow away or wash away when you're watering it. That's good. We want our seeds to stay where we put them, right? At least until we're ready to put them somewhere else. So what I've done here is I've got just the coir on the bottom, because your young roots don't really care about the bottom part. They're going to get some strength by the time they get to the bottom. So I've been taking my coir and sifting it for the top layer. Okay, if you're using something that isn't directly marketed as a seed starting medium, you're going to want to do this, because you got to think about your seedlings as babies. Their roots are babies. And like actual, people babies, puppies, whatever, you've got to give them an easy path or they aren't getting anywhere. Hence the fine medium. All right, the second most important thing you're going to do is actually read your seed packet. It's going to tell you what to do, more or less. Particularly on varieties that you're not familiar with, you're going to want to pay attention to the depth you're sowing it at and when you can put it outside. Some of them are really nice, like this one will tell you outside instructions, inside instructions, any extra instructions you might need, and which one they recommend. This one recommends that you sow them directly outside rather than start them inside, but I'm going to do what I want. You really do want to pay attention, because if you're not familiar with a seed, like I've grown sweet peas before, not a big deal. I know what I can get away with in my garden with those. But if you are not personally familiar with a particular seed, pay attention to your seed packet, especially the depth you need to plant them at, because all of them are a little bit different. If you shove a pansy down a ½ inch, you're never going to see them again. But if you leave peas laying on the top, those aren't going to do much anything, and the birds are just going to eat them. So that is an important detail to pay attention to. So there's lots of choices for what you want to start your seed in, too. And they basically come in two categories: open trays, like what I was sifting my cocoa coir into, and individual options. Now the individual options might look like these, where it's a multi-cell thing. It's one tray, but they're individual plant cups, basically. Or you can get individual pots. There's a lot of different options out there, and you can do some browsing and decide what works best for you. Now, which one you choose is going to depend both on what you're growing and the sort of space that you have to actually hold your seed starts before they go out into the garden. The big advantage to individual spaces is there's no thinning involved, and it's easier to grow bigger plants, provided, the size of the cell. Like this one, you're going to be able to grow bigger plants than you are in this one, because the cells are smaller in this guy. So smaller cell, smaller plant. I find that the trays are better for things with poor germination rates, or seeds that are easier to scatter than sow, like they're really tiny, or for things that you're going to plan on planting as a clump anyway, like maybe you just want to do a lettuce mix. You can just sow this thing and they pop up, you trim them, you eat them, you're done. Easy peasy. I suggest that you do things with poor germination rates in trays because it's really crappy to sow 48 cells of something and only have 12 of them pop up. Okay, that's a waste of those other 36 cells because you know it's not going to be 3 nice packs of 4 right next to each other. No, it's going to be one over here, and a couple over here, and maybe 3 out of the 4 in that one. It's a waste. It's easier to just do it in a tray, pull them out, and then you can pot them up individually as you want, or go from a tray into one of these things. And then you know that you're filling out your cells that you can grow them on and have them nice sized plants for transplant anyway. So you can use them together. Okay, it doesn't have to be an either or situation. So when you're starting seeds, ideally you want to start with moist medium because it's going to be easier to work with and it's easier to give the seeds a good start. If the soil or whatever under the seeds is already moist, you don't have to water it too heavily when you're done and risk washing your seeds away. Because we don't want to put all this effort in just to end up screwing it all up like that, right? So, moisten your medium and then start sowing your seeds. It'll go a lot better. Now, if you're using cocoa coir like I am, you really should let it soak beforehand. So ideally, I would put these away for a couple hours, let it soak through, and then come back to it. But I'll be honest, I don't have that kind of time, so I'm just going to get to it. So when you're sowing seeds, it can be really advantageous to start a hole rather than just pressing the seed in. 1, it kind of helps you move faster, and 2, it gives you more control over where your seed is going. So you can use, there's tools called dibblers. Sometimes you'll find they look like this. It's kind of got 2 ends to it. If you have really small seeds, you can just use like a skewer or, your finger. It does work. Or a pencil. There's lots of different things you can use to actually make that hole. But since I am going to be starting with my sweet peas, this is how big my seeds are. So I don't really need a big deep hole or a big hole for them in the first place. So I'm going to use this end. So I like to drop more than 1 seed just in case one decides not to germinate. If you're really short on seeds or very confident in the germination rates, you can just sow 1. You don't have to do multiples by any means. But I like a little insurance personally. Then you just want to come through and cover those up. Pat. Tuck them in. After you've gotten them sown, you want to water them in. Like I said, we're not trying to make mud. But it is going to look like I'm coming at this kind of heavy because of how cocoa coir is. And every grower will tell you how essential labeling is. Okay, I've got these cool little tags. And you can find them really cheap on the internet. It's just a little plastic thing. Okay. And I'm being specific on this one because I am also growing peas to eat. But I'm probably just going to put those outside. Now, since I'm growing this whole thing, I'm going to stick it right in the middle, so I know. But if I were doing a section, I would just want to decide where I want the identifying label to be. Like if I were growing this in quadrants, this one for me would be these 4. And then the tag for these 4 would go over on the other edge of this one. But as long as you are consistent with how you label it, it doesn't really matter. You can label individual cells if you want. You can label each six pack. However, you are best able to keep track of your plants. So, the tray. Like I said, trays are good for things that either have a poor germination rate, are easier scattered than sown individually, or that you're going to kind of plant in a clump. Now, I am actually going to sow a couple of different things in here. So what I'm going to do to start with is just come along and make myself a fence. Anyway, so what I'm sowing here is I'm doing alyssum, which has ridiculously tiny seeds and just kind of grows in a carpet, and I'm going to basically plant it as a clump anyway. And I'm going to sow some lettuce. Something you can do for tiny seeds, and this was shared with me by a professor of mine while I was getting my horticulture degree, and that is a shot glass. Okay, when you use a shot glass, you see how tiny those seeds are? But you use a shot glass, and it's really easy to just tap, 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 tap your seeds along. And you can see through it, so you know how many seeds you've got left, so you know how far you can go. Because, close enough. So, again, labeling is important. Now, these guys want to be barely covered. So I'm going to come back and just sift more coir on top of it. I'm not going to bury them down. I'm going to just tap, tap, tap a little bit over top of it. And I'm going to turn it around. Now my lettuce wants to be a little bit deeper. So I'm going to take my dibbler, and I'm just going to kind of make a little trench in there. And you can see that some of that coir is, again, not very moist because I half-assed it instead of letting it soak properly. So I'm just going to, spray down those trenches too. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And after making sure one more time that I don't have any leftover seeds in there, I'm going to use my shot glass again. So, instead I've got these trenches that I'm going to be aiming for this time. Same thing. You see how nicely those are falling right in the trench? They're not really going all over the place. They're just right in the line where I want them. Close enough. I do have some extra seeds, but I think that's enough in there for now. So, with these, I'm going to come through, pinch over my trench. Yeah, some of them aren't quite getting buried all the way, but I'm going to do the same thing I'm doing on the other side, so it's okay that these aren't quite as deep as they want to be. Now, if you're doing this outside, you'll probably want to mark where your rows are, but I don't care. It's not like anything else is going to come up in this, so I don't have to worry about that. Now, the cool thing about this is actually a cupcake tray that I found at the Dollar Tree. And as such, it comes with a lid. I really like the lid because it's going to help you maintain the moisture on your seeds, the humidity, which means is going to save you from having to water it as often. It just snaps on there. And there you go. You can kind of see still. It's nice and clear. You could punch holes in it if you wanted to allow for some breathing, but I'm just going to pop the lid off every once in a while and call it good. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your seeds and put them somewhere they're going to get good light and they're going to be fairly warm for the most part. Some seeds do want a cool environment. Like my sweet peas right now, I'm going to just shove them out on the porch because that's where they want to be right now. Alright, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them down in the comment sections or hit me up on Instagram. If you could hit that like and subscribe button for me while you're still here, I would really appreciate it. Happy planting!